I took a Course in Miracles on a Disney cruise with me. And on the first morning, before starting the text and the workbook, I thought maybe I should say a prayer. I'm starting on a spiritual path thing. It seemed like a prayer would be good. So I started, and I want you guys to know I knew nothing about metaphysics. I hadn't even heard the word metaphysics, okay? I knew nothing. To me, God was completely separate from me. The Baptist God would be a good description of God. If you think of the Baptist God, that's what God was to me. So this was what I was praying to in my mind, and I said a prayer. And I don't even remember how the prayer started. It was just almost like a routine, like this is something I should do. But during the prayer, something happened. It was like something came down over me, and I became completely swept up and completely overcome by this desire to just surrender the rest of my life in that moment. And I ended up praying, I will learn whatever you want me to learn, and I will do whatever you want me to do. Just make me useful for the rest of my life. And with that, it was done. I mean, it was just done. I've never, ever, ever taken that back. Nothing out of the ordinary started immediately. I started reading the text, and I started doing the workbook lessons very faithfully, exactly as they direct you to do them. But about 2 months into it, I started having visions. Now for me, remember, a very conservative, very normal, by conservative standards person, this was something you can imagine I never even expected. And the visions seemed to be coming to help me learn A Course in Miracles. And I even had some dreams that taught me like the metaphysics of the Course. I wasn't in a course group. I didn't have a teacher. It was just me, the book, and obviously the Holy Spirit. And I started learning very fast, and I started learning with great clarity. In fact, it wasn't long that I had clarity that people who had been studying for 25 years didn't have. It was just very fast, very clear. About 6 months into it, I had a vision one day, which was a little different because it wasn't educational. The others had all been educational. But I had a vision one day where I was in a cavern, and I knew it was a very deep cavern, and it was very, very dark, like you couldn't even see your hand in front of your face. And I knew intuitively that there were like 8 different passageways that led out of the cavern. But you couldn't find them because it was so dark. And there were a bunch of people down there with me. I wasn't alone. Everybody was down there. Everybody was lost. Everybody wanted out. Nobody could find their way out. And I was standing there with an armful of lit candles. And people would come up to me, and I would hand them a candle. They would take the candle. They would find their own passageway and their own way out using that candle to light the way. When I kind of came back from that vision, I knew that that meant something. And I didn't want to have anything to do with guessing. I didn't want to get involved in guessing the meaning of that at all. So what I did, and again, I have no idea why I did this, because I'd never heard of anybody doing this, but I went to the keyboard, I put my hands on the keyboard, and I said a prayer. I said, if you are trying to tell me something, just tell me in a way that I can understand. And my fingers started typing. And I read a message. And the message came from what I call the Holy Spirit, but as you guys know, that's just a name for it. But the message came from what I call the Holy Spirit, but it introduced itself to me as the teacher of God. And it said, I have many names, but that's what I am. I am the teacher of God. And it said, this is what is needed now, our teachers. And it said something like, I want you to write for me. And then it said, you can do it, you are doing it now, which I remember, I was telling them last night, I remember thinking, well, I can't argue with that, because I was doing it. It says, you can do it, you are doing it now. And then it asked me to write for it, and then it asked me to teach about what I write, and it said, that is how I would learn. That was my path of learning, was writing and teaching. And then it told me not to be afraid. It said, I will be with you always. And when it was over, I was in this really peaceful place, and I heard myself say, yes, I will do it. Yes, I will do it. And then right after that, I crashed into a ton of fear. But right from that to a ton of fear, because I really thought that maybe I was going crazy. Because remember, that was a normal conservative person just 6 months earlier, right? Not even thinking about spirituality. So I really thought that maybe I was going crazy. But after an hour and a half of just feeling the fear, letting the fear go, continuing to accept that I was going to do this in my mind, the fear passed by. And I had a plan for that day. I don't remember what the plan was, but my daughter and I had plans. It was a Sunday. And I then felt suddenly that instead of whatever we were planning to do, we were going to go to a movie. I just felt we were going to go to a movie. I had no idea what movie. I went and I pulled up, one of those theaters with like 24 movies on the screen. My eyes started scanning, and my eyes landed on a movie called Shall We Dance? And I heard in my mind, that's the one. I'd never even heard of this movie, but it's Richard Gere and J-Lo, what's her name? Jennifer Lopez. Yeah, they were in it. And I heard that's the one. So I went to see this movie because I knew that there would be a message in it for me, and I just waited until I saw the message. And there was one scene where Jennifer Lopez is a dance instructor, and she's teaching Richard Gere to dance just before his first competition, and he's really not doing a very good job. He's like stepping on her toes and that kind of thing. And so finally she says to him, don't think, don't move unless you feel it. And I knew that was my message, because I had just been asked to write for the Holy Spirit, and I knew that the writing was never, ever, ever to come to me. It wasn't up to me when I wrote. It wasn't up to me what I wrote about. I wasn't to give a thought to it. I was, don't think, don't move unless you feel it. And that is the way it has always, always been. I will suddenly feel, in fact, I'll even hear, grab your notebook. And whatever I'm doing, I will stop, I will grab my notebook, and then it just starts to come. So it literally never has come from me. So that's how the whole thing began. And the very next day, my very first message came. And at first, the messages were just like the visions. They seemed to come to teach me about A Course in Miracles. So there was about 6 months of me getting messages that were teaching me about what I was studying. So I had this teacher now coming to me in writings. And then one day, in fact, 3 days after I finished the Course in Miracles workbook, I received another calling. And this time, I was asked to read the New Testament, to realize that the New Testament is nothing but a symbol, and that if I would accept that I didn't understand the symbol, that this voice would interpret it for me. And it was a beautiful message. In fact, it's in the introduction to the book if you want to read the whole message. Now that I go back and read the initial calling, I realize if I had been awake enough, I could have woken up from that and not had to write the book, because it was all right there in the calling. But it was a beautiful message. So I was also guided to leave my job, and I was guided to move from Boston to North Carolina. So we did that, and then in August of 2005, one morning, I was woken up very early, and I was told it was time to begin, to go find a Bible. And that's how it started. And for the next 13 and a half months, nearly every day, as I would read the Bible, I started at the beginning with Matthew, just went through in that order. I would read until I felt an intuitive prompt to stop. It could be one sentence, it could be 2 sentences, it could be an entire paragraph, 2 paragraphs, a whole story. It just varied. But I would read until I felt to stop. And then when I stopped, especially in the beginning, my mind would be filled with my own thoughts about what I had just read, because I'm a normal thinking person. And so what I would have to do first is dump my mind. I would have to look at my thoughts, my judgments, my opinions, and I would have to dump my mind. But when my mind got to a place of complete emptiness, and my heart was filled with a desire to literally only hear what the Holy Spirit had to say. Like I didn't care about my own opinions anymore. I only cared about what the Holy Spirit said. Then an inner dictation would begin. Wait a second. Okay, then an inner dictation would begin, and all I did was copy that down. So when you look at this, people often say, your book, Regina, and I don't correct them. But the only way that it's my book is that it was given to me as a gift. I did not write this book. Okay, the gift was given to me. I wrote it down, and so that's what happened. This book came to teach me, just like those initial visions came to teach me. This was the best teacher of all.